For a long time, I've been debating getting into VR, and I decided that with the Vive Pro 2 coming out just recently on June 3rd, that I'd get my hands on one and see what this VR thing's all about. So why the Vive Pro 2? Well, I actually wanted a Valve Index, but I was waiting to see if the Valve Index 2 would come out because I really wanted to get in with the second generation VR headsets. And with no Valve Index 2 on the horizon, I decided to go with something that was newer. So the HTC Vive Pro 2 comes out, touting 5K display, which is substantially more than the current Valve Index display. And I really wanted to get into something that is, the higher displays, the higher resolutions, so that you can really be fully immersed in virtual reality. Now, the Valve Index is arguably one of the best headsets available today on the market. It's also one of the more expensive headsets, although the Valve Index is a lot more cost-effective than the HTC Vive Pro 2. The HTC Vive Pro 2 is about $1,079 currently, and it just launched on July 3rd. One of the tricky things with the Vive Pro 2 is that it only comes with the headset by itself. They don't even offer a full kit right now. So you actually have to piecemeal your kit together. You have to buy the SteamVR base stations as well as controllers completely separately. Now, the SteamVR base stations can actually be really hard to get and are mostly always sold out on Steam. The HTC base stations are the SteamVR base stations. They're just more expensive. They come with a shorter cable than the Steam version, but it's essentially the same hardware. So you end up paying about a $50 premium over what you would buying it off of Steam. But since it's never available on Steam, well, you don't have a choice. You're going to buy it from HTC instead. Now, arguably, the Vive Pro 2 is overkill. It's more designed for your ultra high-end business, virtual reality, virtual workstation. Definitely overkill for virtual reality. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to be comparing the Vive Pro 2 to the Oculus 2. The reason being the Oculus 2 is a lot more accessible to the average person, but a lot of people hate the being locked down to Facebook. As a matter of fact, I've heard of people having their Oculus account banned if they're sharing their headset with friends or lending it to a friend, and it really brings into question if there's a secondhand market for VR headsets, or with Facebook kind of locking everything down and being hyper aggressive about it, it could steer people away. And like I said, my top choice was the Valve Index, but I was really waiting for something with a little bit higher resolution. And with 5K resolution available on the HTC Vive Pro 2, for me it was a no-brainer to get in and give this a shot to see, is it really worth what it costs to put together a full VR setup? And how do you go about doing it? So let's get this Vive Pro 2 opened up. We'll figure out how to set it up. We've got the base stations and the Valve Index controllers, and we'll get everything set up. We'll get the environment, the space set up, and then we'll see what does it actually take to get a good VR setup, and how does the HTC Vive Pro 2 really perform? All right, so let's get this box opened up. Let's see what it comes with. Now it says that it comes with, in the box, the headset, the link box 2 DisplayPort USB 3 cables, and that's it. So we'll get this thing opened up. I'm interested to see how long the cables are. I want to set kind of an overhead tether system for this so that I can have a 10 by 10 space to play in. All right, so inside the box, I've got the Vive link box, which is USB and power and their display. And then we've got our DisplayPort cable, which is going to connect DisplayPort to the display unit here. And then we've got the USB cable, which is going to go to the computer. And then we've got a power adapter. So I don't actually know what comes inside the box, but we'll see. There is a nice cable in here. So there's the actual Vive Pro 2 headset. We'll take that out, and it's got a fairly long cable on there already. And that's going to connect into the Vive link box. So I'll have to see how I can tether that to play. And it looks like it's probably long enough to play in a 10 by 10 area. And what else do we have here? We got a couple of little positioning stickers, not sure what that's for, and a small instruction manual. So I've never actually done VR before, so this is going to be very interesting for me to go through and set up. All right, so the headset itself, kind of an interesting little headset. It kind of from photos looks exactly like the Vive Pro. So it's kind of like the Vive Pro just with upgraded hardware. There's didn't notice any visual changes from any of the marketing or photography that I looked at. You got lots of bubble wrap, very well packaged so that there's no damage during shipping. And then you've got some covers just over the front cameras. We'll have to take those off as well. And I've been told these are pass-through cameras, although the resolution on them is kind of not very great, a little bit grainy, but that it's a feature that a lot of people don't actually use. So I'll have to play with that. So we'll go ahead and get that plugged into my computer. We'll start getting it trained up on the SteamVR, and then we'll see how easy the setup is. And then we'll try to set up the actual virtual environment. So we've got 2 of the SteamVR base stations. And these are the HTC versions, which are almost identical. They're just more expensive and come with shorter cables. And then we've also got the Valve Index controllers. I went with the Index controllers just because the reviews said they're a lot better. And, you know, I was going to go with the Valve Index system anyway. So we'll be able to use those with the SteamVR base stations, which is all fully compatible with the headset and the Index controllers. All right, so first things first, we've got to go download the Vive Pro 2 setup from HTC. Let's give that a quick download, and we'll get that set up. All right, so we've got pretty much everything we need here. The welcome to Vive setup, so we're gonna go ahead and say I consent. Of course, nobody reads these, but if you don't consent, you can't use it, so go for it. Update your graphics card driver for the best experience with the Vive. Download the latest driver. So, I don't know which NVIDIA driver I'm on right now. Take a quick peek. So, yeah, 46647. It's recommending 46677. Let's go ahead and download the latest driver. It couldn't hurt. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and try to get this all connected up. So, this is going to be the display port that's going to drive the Vive link box. So you got the little Vive link box. We're going to plug that right into there. And that's going to go to my display port. So let's plug that into display port in the back. Then we're going to need power. Lucky for me, I've got power literally right beside my desk here. Plug that in. Now our HTC link box has access to power. Now, this is going to be a pretty crude setup initially because I just want to get it hooked up, get it set up, learn how to set up this thing properly because this is my first time setting up VR. So like a lot of you, if you're looking at taking the plunge on VR and you decide that now's the time, you know, hopefully this video can help you kind of walk through what else is going to be required. So we're going to have to set up SteamVR as well. So the graphics driver is installed, we can get out of there. All right, let's get this HTC Vive thing rocking and rolling. So I got the Vive pretty much set up. It's going to be a mess of wires because I've got my microphone cords and everything all over the place. And so we'll go ahead and get that connected, powered on. It's just a little button on the front to turn it on. And it's detecting the device. Of course, my guess is it probably will need the software to be able to set it up. All right, so let's install the HTC Vive Pro 2 software. So there's a little bit of a thing we got to remove there. So we'll get that out of there. And I don't want to muck up all the lenses with my dirty fingers. All right, so the Vive Pro 2 setup is going. It's getting installed. Ooh, I'm excited to play Half-Life Alyx, although I've been warned that Half-Life Alyx, once you've played it, you can never go back to other VR games because Half-Life, kind of over the course of the last 15 years, Half-Life has really been kind of the standard in gaming. Half-Life came out, then Half-Life 2 came out with really great storyline, gameplay, graphics. So Half-Life Alyx kind of sets that standard again. And you know, it's really something I'd like to see more of is Steam creating more of like the Half-Life games. Steam has access to a huge amount of money, a huge amount of funding with the Steam store and all with the Steam store and all the money that they make. You know, I'd really love to see them really dive in depth into creating some amazing VR games. if Half-Life Alyx is half as good as people are telling me it is, then I'm hoping that we have even more immersive VR games and like multiplayer VR games in the near future, because VR is really exciting to me. It's kind of the next gen. When I started out with VR, when VR first kind of started launching, it was like the Virtual Boy came out. It was like a red headset that you put on your head, and it was just like red lasers. And you could play like a little, vector tank game where you drive around in these like just vector line tanks and blow each other up. And it was really kind of a really cool concept back then. You could go to Future Shop or any of your local tech shops, put on this headset and really play this Virtual Boy game. And that was when people were like, wow, virtual reality is going to be so cool. And that was like 15, 20 years ago. And now today we finally have, headsets like the Valve Index, the HTC Vive, amongst many other different VR platforms that really enable you to have a fully immersive environment, high field of view. So this is really cool. This is a great time for the tech world. And I know the last year it's been like graphics card shortages and parts shortages and COVID-19 and all these other things, but don't fret. The future is bright. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's going to come down the pipeline. The tech is not dead. Tech is exciting, it's new, and there's a lot more tech where this came from. Wow, this install has taken a long time. So I'm going to get through the install and then I'll come back. All right, so I've kind of stalled in the setup. It wants me to make sure that my Steam account is online, and it totally is, but the setup won't continue. So I'm going to go offline and then online. Hopefully that'll get us moving forward. All right, we are back. All right, so the Vive Pro 2 setup is good. It just was not quite working well with Steam, so I just ended the setup and went through to make sure the setup went through okay. Did not uninstall it when I ended the setup because it asked, do you want to uninstall? I'm like, no. So now it wants me to set up the hardware. So software's installed. Now it wants me to set up the base stations. So here it kind of tells you, okay, you want to be in a minimum play area of 6 feet, 6 inches by 5 feet. Maximum play area size, it says 7 meters by 7 meters. Now that's 23 feet by 23 feet. We'll be in about a 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 space. So this should work out quite well. So prepare for the setup. You want to move your furniture, obstacles, make sure there's power outlets where we're mounting the base stations, and you might need some tools, tripods, etc. to set these up. Find the base stations and its components and then complete the setup steps. Base station X2, power adapter X2. All right, so place your base stations. I kind of missed a step there. Mounting options for base stations. So I'm going to go ahead and get these base stations mounted up, and then I'll come back and we'll get this set up, finished all the way. All right, so we got the base stations mounted now. You can see kind of one right here behind me, and then there's the other one just over on the other side there. And so these are, to my understanding, like optical tracking. So they're gonna work with the headset and with the controllers to kind of track where we're going. So let's get these set up. We'll see how they're working. Place your base stations in opposite corners so they face one another. Yeah, they kind of face one another, so that should be pretty good. Each base station has a 150-degree horizontal field of view, probably about that much there, and each base station 110-degree vertical field of view, so not as much vertical field of view than horizontal. Ideally mount the base stations above head height, which they both are right now, more than 2 meters from the floor. So it kind of shows them leaning downwards. Now with my current setup, I can't lean them downwards just simply because they're not adjustable. I'm just using lighting stands right now that have a screw mount on the top so that I can use them for now. I might have to get something a little bit more thought out later, but I do have wall mounts as well that I can permanently install in my permanent VR space that I'm going to be creating. Turn the base stations on, attach the power cable, and then plug the adapters on. The green lights should be on, and yes, there are green lights on both of them. So we'll turn that on. The link box is already plugged in, hooked up, and ready to go. Connect the cables, which is done. Connect the link box to your PC, which is also done. It's really crude right now. You can see it's just kind of dangling over here with cables everywhere. Again, I just want to get this set up before I really set up a permanent place for it. Time to connect the headset. So, connect the headset. Connection check. USB 3 or higher USB port is recommended. So, that would be because my front ports on my Lian Li case are not USB 3 on the bottom, but on the top they are. That's because I had to use an adapter to plug in both, because the motherboard only has one USB 3 header, and the Lian Li case comes with two USB 3 headers, so the bottom ones are USB 2, the top ones are USB 3. It's funny because I use the bottom ones more frequently now, when I thought I'd use the top ones more frequently, so I got to swap that eventually. All right, so connecting the headset to the link box. Press the power button on the link box. That's all done. Next, updating firmware. Cool. Do not turn off the headset or remove the cable during the update process. Yeah, we don't want to brick our headset. So, all right, firmware is updated. So now it wants to set up the controllers, which I still have in the box. So I'm gonna have to bust out those controllers. And it says that I have to charge them. I'm hoping they've got enough charge that I can at least do this for the video and for the initial setup before I work towards setting up the full VR space. So let's see what we end up with here. Controllers times 2. That's going to be like, turn the controllers on. Okay, so I got to go get them out of the box. I'll go get the controllers out of the box. We'll turn them on, and then we'll play with them. I'm getting kind of excited because VR, man, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to get the controllers unboxed, get them set up and ready to go. I'll be right back. All right, so we've got our Valve Index controllers set up. We'll hit the little power buttons on there, and they'll both power on, and then we should be able to click next and set up our controllers. Pair the controllers. All right, so there's going to be a pairing button on here. Now, these are the Valve Index controllers. I don't know if it's the same pairing process. I think what we'll do is we'll manually pair the controllers through the SteamVR app. So for now, we'll click skip. You can pair the controllers from SteamVR settings. So we'll skip anyway. Almost there, launch room setup. Actually, you know what? We're going to go ahead and jump into the SteamVR setup, so that we can get the controllers paired, and at least then those are set up, because we've got the base stations already kind of ready to rock and roll. But we're going to have to set up SteamVR as well. I'm sure it's got its own full setup that we're going to have to go through. So we're going to set it up for standing only for now. We'll reset this up later. Establish tracking. Place the headset in a location visible from the base stations. Okay, next. Calibrate your space. Stand in the middle of your cleared space. Okay, so it wants me to stand, but I'm going to set this up sitting for now, just because I don't really want to be standing to do this video right now. Oh, that's tight. That is tight like a twigger. I'm going to have to loosen that up a little bit, because that is really quite tight on there. Don't know how much one can loosen this up. But I have clearly a pretty big head, so... Oh, okay. I can see my little SteamVR. Oh, this is really, really cool, actually. There's a whole kind of workspace that's trying to be set up right now. All right, we'll come back to that in a moment. Multiple base stations set up for channel 1. Best use unique channels for the base stations. So how do I configure the base stations? Link box Bluetooth driver needs to be updated. Update Bluetooth driver. So I got to do a lot of little updates to make this thing go. Let's see if we can bring our video capture for our virtual space into our recording here. So let's see, Vive Pro multimedia. So that's the Vive Pro cameras. There they are. That's kind of cool. Hi, what's going on? Wow, look at the fisheye on those guys. All right, so that's not what I want though. So I'm having difficulty with my Bluetooth settings. So, let's see, it says waiting. Base station is currently tracking on... Oh, we gotta update our base station. Bluetooth services need to be able to entirely blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to get my base stations updated. So I'm gonna go get my base stations updated and I'll come back. So this is kind of how it goes. When I want to set something up, there's always a lot of hoops to jump through, and I want you to see those hoops because it's, again, not just as simple as plug and play. Let's finish setting up our center of our headset here. So just kind of set this up, and then we're going to say, so we're going to say calibrate center. So that says we're good. Locate the floor. Place the headset on a stable surface and click the calibrate floor button. Okay, put that there. Calibrate floor. And the height that we are from the floor is about 24 inches. All right, so we're done our room setup. There it goes. Now we're connected. Good. We just had to restart the Vive link box. And so now it should do an update on the base stations and configure each base stations for 2 different channels. So it's recommending that we put the base stations on 2 different channels in order to operate the best. Okay, so it's connecting channel 1. The other one's on channel 1 as well. So I'm going to go automatic configuration, continue. All right, so now it's moved the other one to channel 11. So we got one on channel 1, one on channel 11. Now there's no more conflicts. Okay, so the base stations are done. Put on your headset to wake VR. All right, so I'm going to do this without my glasses on. And of course, I'm going to put this cable kind of behind me, and that way it's not in my way. All right, get this headset kind of put on a little more comfortably. All right, cool. So I'm going to see if there's a way for me to adjust this, because I'm pretty blind without glasses. I can't see without my glasses on, so unfortunately, unless there's a way to adjust the actual lensing, it's just because I'm half blind. Controllers. So I need to get the controllers paired. So let's see here. I want to pair a different type of controller. We're going to do the Valve Index controller. Press and hold both the B button and system button until the light begins blinking blue. Cool. Okay, it's blinking blue. And we'll make the other one blink blue too. All right. Oh, VR headsets mess up your hair pretty good, don't they? I'm going to have some pretty messy hair after this. Okay, so I think both controllers are paired now. So let's dive back into our VR. Of course, my cat's here. He's like, give me attention. I want to play with you. All right, so everything's working now. I'm in my little SteamVR workspace. And oh, this is weird. This like lets me kind of change my rotation. Oh, this is cool. SteamVR home. Ooh, look, I've got like a point and click pew pew. What was that? It's like a whole grid on the floor that I can see. Looks like you don't have any VR applications yet. Once you've installed some, they will show up in the panel for quick test. You can find thousands of games and experiences on Steam. Click below to open the SteamVR dashboard. Yes. Of course, I don't know where it went. This is pretty cool, though. I mean, it's very responsive. Holy. The only thing that kind of sucks is I got to wear glasses, and I'm getting a little bit of a shine or reflection on the glasses. But something I'll have to just get used to because I'm blind as a bat. So can I browse Steam? Ooh, haha, that's really cool. Welcome to SteamVR. Ooh, haha, I've got my table right here though. I end up bumping into that a lot. So let's see, trigger, moving around. To teleport, just push forward on the joystick. You will see an arc that ends with a green circle on the ground. Release the joystick to teleport to the green. Oh, okay, cool. So push the forward on the joystick. Quick access menus. Ooh. Gotta say, I'm already getting kind of a little bit motion sick, but I'm just not used to this, I guess. So let's just let's get out of here. Pew pew. All right. So we kind of go. Oh, wow, that's cool. So I can kind of look around and go. I want to go over there. Teleport. Woo. Well, that's cool. Let's go take a look at the scenery. Wow, I've got to play Skyrim VR. That's going to be so cool. Oh, it's like actually blurry over there because I'm so far away. Ah, this is cool. Let's get these audio little guys down here. Pretty far from my ears, so I'm going to have to do some adjusting on this headset to really make it fit properly and adjust this band a little bit so I can get it better around my head, because right now it's not really sized appropriately, but not bad for a quick setup. So that's a lot of fun, but we're gonna go get our it's time for us to go get our actual VR room set up so that we can actually play, and then we'll rock and roll and see where we end up. Oh yeah, this garbage here. Let's just throw that out there. Don't need that. All right, let's clean this stuff up too. Get that out of here. That's how I like to clean up my space. Just toss stuff out. Just toss it out the window. Let's just grab this stuff. And we'll teleport. Go teleport? No, not while I'm holding stuff. So this should be my barrier. That's weird because it's telling me that there's a barrier there. That's because that's my computer barrier. Okay, so there's my barrier. Gotta watch these cords. So let's load Half-Life Alyx. We're in our staging area here. There's my little device and my other device over there. That's pretty cool. This cable definitely needs to be tethered to the ceiling. All right. Wow. Cool. Wow. Well, this is cool. Whoa, what's this now? Haha. Cool. Let's see. It's good. I don't want to do difficulty hard. Haha. That's pretty cool. Wow, this is a cool little world they've created here. Oh, there's a pigeon. Let's go grab the pigeon. Oh, look at that. Push to snap, turn left or turn right. I don't need to do that. I've got a whole space to work in here. This is so cool, man. I like that. You can probably juggle these, you know? Probably like... Haha. That's pretty cool. Where'd that bird go? There he is. Wonder if I can grab this jug. Oh yeah, look at that. Get that bird. Ha! I missed him. So I've had a couple of weeks now to play with the HTC Vive Pro 2, and I wanted to compare it against something else. Now this is my first time at all ever trying VR. So I was lucky enough to be able to borrow an Oculus Quest 2 headset. I really wanted to get a handle for what does the HTC Vive Pro 2 offer that something a little more entry level like the Quest 2 doesn't. And I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised with the Oculus Quest 2. Overall, the HTC Vive Pro 2 has a 2448 by 2448 resolution. That resolution gives you, as advertised, 5K when combining both eyes. The Oculus Quest 2 is 1832 by 1920 resolution, so it's a little bit less resolution than the HTC Vive Pro 2. One of the things that I noticed right away with the Oculus Quest 2 was the pixel grid. It was very visible. I could really see each individual pixel in the display. And you don't really notice it when you're playing a game for the most part, but it is a lot more noticeable on the Oculus Quest 2, and that makes sense because the resolution is a lot less. Now in comparison, the Valve Index is only 1440 by 1600, so the Oculus Quest 2 is already a better resolution than the Valve Index. Some of the recent updates to the Oculus Quest 2 have allowed and enabled 120 Hz frequencies in the display as well, which is on par with the HTC Vive Pro 2. Now the field of view on the Oculus Quest 2 is only 90 degrees, whereas it's 120 degrees on the Vive Pro 2. Although I didn't really notice it all that much. When playing games like BeatSaber, I found that the experience was the same from 120 degrees to 90 degrees. I think the only place that it might be noticeable is games like Half-Life Alyx, which I wouldn't be playing on an Oculus Quest 2 anyways. So let's talk gaming performance on the Vive Pro 2. So performance-wise, obviously the Vive Pro 2 is going to be tethered, so it's going to run based on the power output of your GPU. The Oculus Quest 2 has noticeably less performance when it comes to how it renders. So you're looking at things like your anti-aliasing, your rough or your smooth edges. The Oculus Quest 2, the edges are a lot rougher, and it's noticeably rougher. And that's to maintain frame rates while you're playing on hardware that is a lot less capable. When you're playing on the HTC Vive Pro 2, I'm running it on a 3090, so there are no limitations as far as what the GPU is able to provide to the headset. The biggest limitations is that the headset is 5K, and if I'm playing a really high-end VR game, I'm not going to be getting more than between 45 and 60 frames per second at 5K. But the image quality is amazing. So even in BeatSaber, you could see kind of really rough edges in the Oculus Quest 2, whereas on the Vive Pro 2, the edges were very smooth and you could hardly tell at all. And it was actually in some cases so smooth that I was having trouble telling if my glasses were causing it to be blurry because I was used to it being a lot more blocky on the Oculus Quest 2. And when I say a lot more blocky, I don't mean a lot more blocky. It's really the same experience. So, if you're really all about anti-aliasing and smooth edging, then yeah, 5K is going to give you a better display overall than the Oculus Quest 2, but not by much. I would say that in general, the experience is actually quite similar between the two headsets. So the output for the Vive Pro 2 is obviously corded. So you're going to need to plug that into your PC. So right away, you're buying a $1,000 headset. It was $1,079 Canadian, and you're going to have to pair that with a computer that's going to be a $2,000 or $3,000 computer. So automatically, the Vive Pro 2 kind of starts off a little bit weak when we're talking about value proposition. The Oculus Quest 2 can be had for about $400 Canadian from Best Buy right now, which is an incredible deal considering you just put it on your head, connect it to your Wi-Fi, and start playing. So let's talk about the setup. The setup for the Oculus Pro 2, literally put it on your head, turn it on, connect to Wi-Fi, buy a couple games, and you're playing. There's literally very little to the setup. Because it uses an inside-out tracking method, there's no additional trackers, there's no additional base stations, there's nothing more than you need than the headset and the controllers. And that's pretty amazing when you consider that the HTC Vive Pro 2 requires up to 2 base stations for a good minimum setup, and those base stations are about $250 Canadian each. Now they're a little bit cheaper if you can get them through the Steam store, but the Steam store is always sold out, so you end up having to buy the base stations directly from HTC for $50 more Canadian dollars, and they also come with a shorter power cable to boot. The setup for the Vive Pro 2 actually took quite a bit of time. I had to download the application, get it installed, I had some issues, some compatibility problems, had to update the drivers, had to set up the base stations wouldn't communicate properly, they were on the same channel, I needed to put them on separate channels, so you get the picture. Also, having the cord, I had to run a tether system in order to get that set up properly. So I started just by hanging it off the ceiling off of a couple of hoops. I ended up buying a Kiwi tether system, which is amazing, by the way. And ultimately, the setup was a lot more difficult. So for your average non-techie user getting into a headset, the Oculus Quest 2 is just absolutely, bar none, better value than the Vive Pro 2. But if you have a high-end PC and you want to play SteamVR and a lot of the Steam games that are available, then the Vive Pro 2 is obviously a better option, or even the Valve Index. The next thing I wanted to talk about is focus. So I had a lot of struggle, and not just myself, but other people that I had try the two different headsets, had a lot of struggle with getting the focus. With the Oculus Quest 2, you literally just put it on your head, find the adjusting point, and it's focused, and it's clear. And I found that with glasses, it was almost immediately clear. It was very easy to get this set up without having to tinker with settings or options or really play with anything too much. The HTC Vive Pro 2 I actually find to be quite difficult when setting it up for someone else, or even for myself, to get it where it's actually clear. But ultimately, the setup of getting the alignment to focus was a lot more challenging on the Vive Pro 2 versus the Oculus Quest. It might have something to do with the field of view being 120 degrees instead of 90 degrees, but all I know is that for simplicity's sake, the Quest 2 was a lot easier to get set up. So let's talk about the comfort. So actually wearing the Oculus Quest 2 was very comfortable. You just kind of slide it on your head. It's a little harder with glasses. You turn it on, you put it on, and you're good to go. It's comfortable, it's really lightweight, and I just literally dropped this on my head and it's perfectly clear. There's nothing wrong with the focus whatsoever. So it's really cool. It powers on automatically. The battery life is pretty decent. And if you want to extend the battery on it, you just have to plug a battery pack in and slide it in your pocket, and you're good to go for an extended period of time. The HTC Vive Pro 2, on the other hand, it's a lot heavier. It weighs a lot. And I found that prolonged gaming sessions actually did give me a little bit of neck strain. Now, I'll just have to build up those neck muscles. I'm not used to using VR, but you know, putting on the headset, relatively easy. It's actually a little bit easier, I find, than the Oculus Quest 2 to put on the headset. But overall comfort, it is fairly heavy. There's not much counterweight, and you wouldn't want much more counterweight because it is overall a pretty heavy headset. The audio is actually much nicer than the Oculus Quest 2, simply because when these speakers cover your ears, it actually is really comfortable, and it kind of drowns out all the sound around you. And while I think they could have done a better job of having like soundproofing or maybe sound removal, I think they did a really good job of making this comfortable, easy to adjust, and easy to fit. The audio on the Oculus Quest 2, on the other hand, is kind of weird. It's kind of, the speakers aren't right next to your ears, so you're kind of working with audio that's being generated towards your ears through the system. And I'm sure that, you know, you could do earbuds, you could do a couple of different ways of running audio that would be maybe a little bit better. There's an audio jack, so you could get that audio sounding a little better with little add-ons. And honestly, for $400 or $500, this is a great entry into VR. But the audio quality of the Vive Pro 2 is quite superior. Now, one thing that I really wanted to talk about comparing the Vive Pro 2 and the Oculus Quest 2 is wearing glasses. These are really inconvenient in most cases, but VR kind of adds to that. So with glasses, I find that on the Oculus Quest 2, there isn't that much blurring. And so when I say blurring, it's when I turn my head or I look sideways through my lenses on my glasses, and you kind of see words start to blur or distort. With the Oculus Quest 2, there was a lot less distortion, and it was a lot easier to use with glasses on. The HTC Vive Pro 2, when it's perfectly comfortable wearing glasses with, the lenses, and again, the field of view being 120 versus 90 may play into this, there's a lot of blurring. So it's actually really hard for me to wear my glasses, wear the Vive Pro 2, and every time I turn my head even just a little bit, words and text and other things kind of blur a little bit. They kind of like, almost like you're smudging the screen with your thumb. And I've cleaned my glasses, I've ensured the lenses are clean, and I still get that kind of smudging effect. Almost like there's some refracting or some restrictions of light. One of my theories is that potentially the LEDs are brighter on the Vive Pro 2 and therefore cause a little bit more refraction and reflection with the glasses than on the Oculus Quest 2. That being said, both are a wonderful experience, and I mean, it's not their fault that I can't see anything without glasses. Now, I tried playing without glasses, and to be honest, you can't. One of the first things I wondered was, hey, maybe I can just take these off and do a quick adjustment on the headset and I'll be able to see, because the adjustment might have a focal setting or a focus setting that would allow me to kind of compensate a little bit for my lack of vision. Unfortunately, the way that the lensing works is that the lensing actually makes it as though the object that you're looking at, or the screen in this case, is at least 2 meters away. So if you can't see, like I can't, more than about 6 inches in front of your face without glasses, unfortunately, you're going to have to wear your glasses while you're gaming in VR. I did find some prescription lenses that you could buy to put in. That might be a better option for you if you're doing a lot of VR, but ultimately you just get used to it. You get used to that little bit of like light smudging that happens when you're wearing glasses, and you just kind of forget about it and move on. But the Oculus Quest 2, I personally felt was a lot more glasses friendly, whether it's the brightness of the LEDs or the field of view. Either way, the Oculus Quest 2 was a more comfortable experience to get into without fiddling around too much. So let's do a quick dollar-to-dollar comparison. The Oculus Quest 2 is $500 Canadian at Best Buy most days. Right now, it can be gotten for about $400 Canadian last time I checked. So for $400 Canadian, you have a ready-to-run VR setup that already can do BeatSaber and any of the other popular games. And I find the actual Oculus store actually has a lot of other VR games that are available that aren't necessarily available on things like the Steam store. So the Oculus Quest 2 is a lot more accessible to more people at $400 to $500 Canadian. The HTC Vive Pro is $1,079 just for the headset. Then You throw in the Valve Index controllers, because you can go with the HTC controllers if you'd like, but the Valve Index ones are pretty slick. So the two Valve Index controllers were $387 Canadian. That's a lot for controllers. So now we're already north of $1,500 Canadian for the HTC Vive Pro 2 setup. Then you have to throw in the base stations for another $500. So you're looking at north of $1,800 Canadian to get into an HTC Vive Pro. And when I throw in the cost of my RTX 3090, things start adding up pretty quickly. So with the HTC Vive Pro, even with a moderate PC, you're looking at between $3,000 to $4,000, maybe even $5,000 Canadian before you get into a full VR setup versus $400 or $500 Canadian. So if you're a first timer getting into VR, the Oculus Quest 2 is going to be the best route for you. So this Oculus Quest 2 is borrowed, and I'm actually considering buying 2 Oculus Quest headsets just so that I can play with other people if I have them over. It's easy to set up the Guardian play space that they have to define the boundaries of where you can play without bumping into walls. And quite frankly, this is far more accessible to play with friends and to play with other people who have the ability to get into a $400 headset, but maybe not a $3,000 or $5,000 setup. Controllers wise, the Oculus Quest 2 controllers are comfortable. They're not bad. I like the little strap. It's not too shabby, but they feel a little cheap after you've tried the Valve Index controllers. The way that your hand slides into the Valve Index controller and sits, and the way it tightens and the way that everything is held together, it's just so comfortable. You don't have to hold on to the controller. You don't have to grip it. You can just let it be loose. If you do this with the Oculus Quest 2, the controller is just gonna flop around. Now, great controllers, super responsive, nothing bad to say about the Oculus 2 controllers, especially for the price, because $387 just for the Valve Index controllers, you can buy almost an entire Oculus Quest 2 with controllers for that amount. But if you want the best, and I'm talking the best virtual reality headset available on the market right now for display, smoothness, and clarity, the HTC Vive Pro 2 is a very good contender. There's not a lot bad I can say about it other than, again, if you wear glasses, it may not be as comfortable. So what do I think about the Vive Pro 2? I absolutely love it. I mean, it is a fantastic headset. The 5K display is just immaculate. You can barely see the pixel grid. Rendering it off of an RTX 3090, everything is smooth and it looks great. Half-Life Alyx is just amazing. I played BeatSaber, Half-Life Alyx. I even did some VR chat, which was interesting. The Vive Pro 2 is a phenomenal headset. It's got the highest resolution of any headset available on the market right now. Its refresh rate is still only 120 Hz, although at 5K, good luck running anything in 120 frames per second other than maybe some lower end games like BeatSaber. So the HTC Vive Pro 2, I will recommend it if it's in your price range and you don't mind spending a little bit more money. With the HTC, you can also get into the Vive trackers that are compatible with SteamVR, and you can get full body tracking, which is what I think I'm going to do next. If you've got a really powerful PC and you don't mind setting up a tethered cable system, the Vive Pro 2 is a pretty sweet headset. Is it worth the price tag of nearly $2,000 Canadian, which would be about $1,650, $1,600 US right now? Is it worth that price to get into VR? I mean, if you have to have the best of the best, then the Vive Pro 2 is for you. Otherwise, I would look at something a little more inexpensive. The Valve Index, for example, is still a phenomenal headset. The Quest Pro 2, I was mind blown that you can get into VR with the Quest Pro 2 for only $400 Canadian. That's an insane deal, considering VR 15, 20 years ago was little red lasers shooting into your eyeballs, giving you a headache after 10 minutes. So now that I'm thoroughly addicted to VR, I'm gonna go play some BeatSaber while you decide what VR headset you'd like to buy. Are there any VR games that you're interested in? Leave some comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.